morning, and as you come in, I'd like to welcome you to Virtual American University and our session this morning, National Security Cyber Careers in the Federal Government. I am Diana Burley. I'm the Vice Provost for Research at AU, and on behalf of the university and our co-sponsors, the AU Alpha Phi Sigma Criminal Justice Honor Society and the School of Public Affairs Tech Policy Association, it is my pleasure to welcome you, our guests, and also to welcome our speakers this morning. The virtual career panel and Q&A session that we are launching is hosted by Divya Ramji, one of our illustrious doctoral students here at the university. And she will be moderating a discussion with several cybersecurity experts from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the National Security Agency, the United States Secret Service, and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. The session will provide you with an opportunity to hear from these distinguished public servants and also to hear about what a day in the life of these career professionals looks like, to get your questions answered so that you can make informed decisions about your path, your educational path, and the experiences that you have, and so that you can be encouraged to join public service and to help secure the nation's critical information infrastructure. So with that, again, I'd like to welcome you, and I am going to turn it over to Divya so that she can begin the conversation. Divya, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Burley. Hello to everybody, and welcome to our wonderful panelists. I'm going to go ahead and introduce who we have here today, starting with Brett Leatherman. He is a supervisory special agent in the National Security Cyber Squad for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He has been at the agency since 2003 and previously served as the Assistant Section Chief of the FBI Cyber Division. Next is Jonah Hill. He is a cybersecurity strategist for the United States Secret Service. He also serves as the executive director of the United States Secret Service's Cyber Investigations Advisory Board. Next, we have Galchutt. She is the senior engagement lead for the Hunt and Incident Response Team at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Prior to working at CISA, she also served in the United States Department of State's Foreign Service. And finally, we have Neal Ziring. He is a technical director at the National Security Agency in the Cybersecurity Directorate. He also previously served as the technical director of the NSA's Capabilities Directorate and the technical director of the NSA's Information Assurance Directorate. So thank you all for being here. It's great to have you all. I think we should just sort of get right into it. And so we'll start with our first question of today, which is, can you all tell us a bit about your agency's core mission areas as it relates to cyber and what you do on a day-to-day basis? And I think let's start with Brett for that.
Thanks, Divya, and thanks to American University for hosting this event and inviting the FBI and our partner agencies to participate. Yeah, the FBI has evolved over the years. We've historically been a crime-fighting agency. Post 9/11, we really bolstered our counterterrorism mission, and in the last probably decade, we've really had to bolster our cyber capability, and that's because criminals, terrorists, counterintelligence or intelligence services, foreign militaries are utilizing cyber capability to target the United States and its interests. A few years back, under Presidential Policy Directive 41, the Department of Justice and the FBI were designated as the lead threat response agency when it came to cyber attacks on U.S. and government-based networks. But we work very closely with DHS in that space, who's designated as the primary asset recovery organization under PPD 41. So our mission within this space really on the national security side is looking at terrorists and others who might utilize cyber capabilities to raise money and bolster their operations to target U.S. and U.S. people, U.S. interests, to look at nation states who engage in cyber espionage and steal our trade secrets, our government and our diplomatic secrets. And on the criminal side, to look at criminal actors who monetize that activity. On the criminal side, we work very closely with partners that you'll hear from today in the U.S. Secret Service and looking at ransomware campaigns and other financially motivated campaigns. So PPD 41 really kind of solidified roles within the U.S. government when it comes to how we respond to cyber events targeting the USG. But then you look at private sector, and private sector owns probably 85% or better of critical infrastructure here in the United States, whether it's in the financial services sector, energy sector, or beyond. And so we have to partner with private sector in this effort. Unlike any other discipline that the FBI does, private sector is a key partner, and we have to engage the C-suites of those organizations, the network defenders in those organizations. We have to take our information that we get with our partners at NSA and CISA and rapidly disseminate threat indicators so that private sector can defend networks, defend data, defend people, constituencies within their communities. And you even look at the elections. 2020, the ODNI just came out with a joint report with the intelligence community, and even our elections, the fundamental foundational principle of democracy here and how we elect our leaders, the people elect our leaders here, even those are under attack by cyber adversaries. And so the FBI with our partners are actively looking at that. We have the Foreign Influence Task Force, which has cyber embeds there, as well as counterintelligence embeds there. And we are actively involved in looking at both people involved in those cyber operations, techniques used in those cyber operations, and even governments used in those cyber operations. So we operate both in the criminal and the national security space when it comes to cyber.
Great, thank you. Maybe Anne, you can tell us more about that, and then followed by Jonah, and then finally Neal.
Yeah, following on what Brett has said, CISA is a fairly young agency, all told, and we do cover quite a bit of a portfolio. Most recently with the elections, CISA with our partners did a huge ramp up to the elections and going out to those offices, the state and local governments out there that were responsible for running the elections and checking out their systems to make sure that they were secure. We send teams out there, of which I'm part of, engagement teams, to assess the systems, look around, do a hunt inside the systems to make sure that there's nothing in there that's surprising. It's a big task. We cover quite a bit of ground. CISA does a lot of work in like assessing the capability, looking at the monitoring available to agencies and local governments, doing vulnerability assessments, and then my team, which is hunt and incident response, where if you're doing a hunt, you're looking for the bad guys in the systems. If you're doing incident response, there is bad guys in the systems, and we're here to help you. So I like that CISA is there to help agencies, local governments, tribal and territorial authorities with their cybersecurity pain points, and kind of give them an eye to what they've got in their networks and what they could do to get better.
Jonah, do you want to go next and also explain what the Secret Service does?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Divya, and thanks everybody in AU for organizing this. So Anne just mentioned that CISA is one of the newer U.S. government agencies. The Secret Service is one of the oldest. It actually began in 1865 primarily to fight counterfeit crimes, counterfeit of U.S. currency, which during the Civil War had become rampant. There are estimates that up to a third of U.S. currency during the Civil War and in the years after was counterfeit. So it was really sort of a national crisis at that time. And so the Secret Service was started as a investigative law enforcement agency, protection of the president, vice president, other protected individuals, places, events. That all came much later. It really wasn't until 40 years plus that the Secret Service started actually taking on a protective role. And today, while the agency is clearly better known for the protective responsibility, the investigative mission remains a core and enduring mission of the Secret Service. And sort of where cyber comes in is, financial crimes in the 19th century and early 20th century was generally done through checks and paper and promissory notes. And increasingly, as digitization came about and the internet came around, financial crimes increasingly and almost predominantly became digitized. So to conduct the kinds of financial crimes investigations that the Secret Service was responsible for investigating, our agents, analysts, specialists needed to become proficient in digital networks, computer systems, digital banking. And so today, the investigative focus really is on digital evidence, data analysis, and those kinds of things that might not conjure up sort of the idea of financial crimes, but the fact of the matter is that that's really how the financial system works these days. So we've got field offices all over the world, like the FBI. We're much smaller than the FBI, but much more targeted in what we investigate. And we work with law enforcement partners across the US, state and local partners internationally to combat financially motivated cybercrime. So a lot of folks ask, where does the division lie between the Secret Service and the FBI? And I think the remit for the FBI is much, much broader. The Secret Service, when it comes to sort of national security threat, nation state threats, those are not our primary focus. Our focus is really those cyber criminals who are manipulating the financial system for illicit profit and gain. Now, there is certainly an overlap, increasingly a significant overlap between nation states and cyber criminals. Things get a little complicated and messy there, but thankfully the Secret Service, FBI, other law enforcement partners, we're all working very closely together on these things. So, even as the cyber ecosystem becomes muddier and murkier, I think the law enforcement community has adapted quite well, and the next set of challenges is yet to be known. But I think at least there's a good foundation to build upon, and I think we and our colleagues are ready.
I think that makes it my turn. So welcome everybody, and thanks to AU for inviting NSA and our partner agencies to speak with you. So National Security Agency, where I've worked for a little over 30 years, is I guess it's a medium age agency. It's much younger than Secret Service, but older than CISA. So NSA has been doing cybersecurity in one form or another since the late 1950s. Our responsibility is primarily cybersecurity for national security systems. So your defense systems, intelligence systems, classified information, things like that. Within that mandate, we do the full spectrum of cybersecurity, from understanding threats, which involves a lot of intelligence analysis. We produce all the keys and codes for US national security. We do security engineering, defensive operations, incident response, hunt, a whole bunch of other missions. So we've got a pretty broad mandate within the national security space. Some of the areas that are important to us include security engineering for defense systems. We work on security standards with various partners. We, of course, partner on cybersecurity operations with the FBI and with CISA and with other elements of the US government. We also have a substantial set of foreign partnerships with our Five Eyes nations and NATO and others. And NSA also does cybersecurity research. We have our own research directorate and collaborate with universities in doing research. And so happy to hit more of that as the discussion goes on. Over.
Thank you for that intro. And just as a reminder to our audience, feel free to send in your questions into the Q&A function below, and we'll definitely get to those at the end of our panel discussion. But all of you bring up this great point of the various kinds of technical things that you do at your agencies. And so it kind of raises the question of, do you really need a technical background to engage in cyber mission as anybody sort of coming into the federal workforce? And maybe, Anne, you could start that off for us.
Sure. I do believe it is important that you have a technical background when you're coming into sort of things, but I think more importantly that you should have a technical curiosity coming in. No matter if you're coming in from a policy perspective or you want to do a hands-on keyboard type of thing, at least being open to seeing things that interest you and researching them, or if you want to go deep and become a practitioner, or if you want to just understand it from a policy point of view. It's very important to at least have a technical curiosity to do that. I've worked both, I'm currently on a hands-on keyboard situation now, but I've worked both the policy and the technical end. And there shouldn't be a division between the technical and the non-technical. I think that kind of mindset might cause people to think, well, if technical is not my thing, then I'm just going to, go into writing and the non-technical things, where you can just kind of flow back and forth and depend on people who are more technical, or at least learn a little bit about it. My background is technical. It's not as deeply technical as some others, kind of mid-range, but I don't think that you need to wait to have that technical experience before you can dive into cyber, though it does help. At the federal level, we have a lot of people who are the SMEs, the subject matter experts, that do tackle the deeply technical issues. And so it's important to understand that when you get into any kind of cyber team, you are a team. There's going to be people on there that know more technical things than you do. Cybersecurity can be very specialized in various things, networking forensics, host forensics, infrastructure design, it's all there. So going in and knowing what interests you, what you know, what you don't know, and who in your team does know those answers is really important part of the federal workspace. And I would extend it to any kind of private sector organization.
Jonah, maybe you want to elaborate on that too for the Secret Service.
Sure. I guess I'll punt that answer a little bit and say, it depends. I can speak personally that I do not have a technical background. I come from a social science, liberal arts, educational background. But that said, I've made it a point to educate myself on some of the technical issues, right? I mean, it's not essential that I am able to run a script or, do any kind of actual hands-on keyboard forensic type analysis, right? If someone gave me a report on a particular type of, malware re-engineering, I would have no idea what it says. But what's important is to be able to at least understand when a technical person explains something to you, what they mean, right? So knowing, what a particular type of intrusion means, what it means when certain types of data is manipulated or exfiltrated. Depending on your role, you really have different degrees of technical sophistication requirements. I'm a public policy specialist. I'm a strategic specialist. I work with budgets. I work with interagency coordination. I work on legislative issues. You need to be familiar with the technology, but you don't actually need to know how to use the technology. So I think that's an important distinction, depending upon the role you're in. We've got lots of folks who are lawyers. We've got people who are writers. There are places in cyber work in the U.S. government for folks who aren't technical, but you need to know, as Ann said, your limitations and what you can and can't provide.
Okay, Divya, I'd like to jump in on this question. This is Neal from NSA. NSA, hires both. My own background is technical. I have degrees in computer science and electrical engineering, but and we hire lots of folks in STEM majors like math and various forms of engineering sciences. And we hire a lot of folks that are not in STEM fields as well. NSA has a large population of analysts. Most of those individuals come from academic backgrounds in language or area studies or international affairs or political science. We have folks who have to manage large projects and business folks, program managers, folks like that. So we hire all sorts. And I know there's a question in the chat about policy positions. Certainly we have those. a lot of folks who go a policy career track start out as analysts and then move more into the policy side of things. Over.
And then Brett, maybe you can help us round out the question.
Yeah. So in the FBI here, if you are technical, we want you to come work for us in cyber. If you are not technical, we want you to come work for us in cyber. And the reason I say that is our mission is to put bad guys in jail. That's our goal, right? And so if we can indict a criminal or a nation state actor, our job is to bring them before the U.S. courts and have them face justice, the justice system here. So in some cases, we can't do that. And we provide advice up on Capitol Hill to the White House, the National Security Council, Treasury Department, our partner agencies, to try to inform our decisions going forward as to what some of these national security actors are doing. So I have agents on the team here who are highly technical, and they are doing reverse malware engineering. Now we have computer scientists, non-agent positions who are doing the same thing, or they're watching data come across the wire pursuant to lawful intercept, whether it's under Title III or FISA, and analyzing that data. Then we have non-technical FBI agents and intelligence analysts who are doing persona work. They're trying to identify who are the people behind the keyboards, and how do we attribute this activity to them? How do we investigate, attribute, and bring them to justice in some way, shape, or form? Identify who the adversary is. So our goal is to look at the technical side, to look at the people side, to engage in outreach efforts as well. I mentioned outreach to private sector. We have folks who are less technical and whose portfolios to really engage private sector partners to defend networks based on what our technical folks are finding, or our folks over at CISA. If you look at CISA's website, you'll see a lot of joint bulletins between FBI, NSA, and CISA. Today, there's a ransomware joint intelligence bulletin that went out as we deal with the Hafnium, the fallout from Hafnium, the Microsoft on-premises Microsoft Exchange vulnerabilities, which my teams here are dealing with over the last week and a half. A lot of the intelligence we get is routing through CISA and being disseminated through our 56 field offices. So we have agents here who are less technical, taking that information out to private sector corporations, government agencies, and saying, listen, you've got a web shell on your system. Here's some recommendations from our partners on how to remediate. And so we're doing those victim notifications. We're also engaged with foreign partners as well. And whether you're technical or not, you're gonna be involved with the United Kingdom, with Germany, with our partners across the globe to combat this threat. So at the end of the day, bring your technical skills, bring your non-technical skills. If you have non-technical skills and an appetite for learning more technical, we provide robust training here, and we will fund a lot of training in the FBI related to that technical side.
That's really interesting from all of you to hear that there is sort of this openness to hiring people who are STEM and non-STEM in all these agencies. And this kind of leads into the next question where, we have these discussions about the importance of diversity in the national security workforce, particularly in the cyber realm. I'll give a little plug, this Friday is the hashtag Share the Mic in Cyber campaign that's highlighting Black practitioners in the field of cyber and privacy, particularly Black women, since it is Women's History Month as well. And so I guess maybe I was hoping you each could probably, possibly tell us about how each of your agencies is trying to address issues of diversity, inclusion, and equity. And maybe we can start with Neal this time.
Okay, thanks, Divya. Yeah, I'm actually on a task force about hiring diversity. So this is one of my favorite topics. At NSA, we believe that the breadth of cyber, and I think the other agencies share this view, that the breadth of the mission really requires a breadth of workforce. Folks with diversity of background, diversity of experience, diversity of educational field, all that stuff. It's essential. So we need folks, like we said, STEM and non-STEM. We work across multiple fronts to try to hire diversity. It's not always easy. It takes work. We do have the requirement, as some of the other agencies do, that we have to hire folks who are able to get a top secret clearance, which means they have to be US citizens. But, so we work with universities. We have a number of initiatives right now in building up relationships with minority serving institutions, in hiring for persons with disabilities. And another important bit is not just hiring diverse, but keeping folks diverse as they kind of go up through their careers. So we're spending some special effort looking at sort of fairness and equity within those internal processes as folks are kind of moving up the ladder. So I'll turn to the other panelists.
Brett, do you want to go next?
Sure. So in the FBI agent hiring process, we run what's called the Diversity Agent Recruiting Program. And so we've recognized that our strength is in our diversity. We have 56 field offices. We're a forward deployed workforce across the country. We have agents stationed in embassies around the globe. We have to be able to engage people where they're at. And to do that, we have to have folks who come from diverse backgrounds. So we are very involved. I would encourage anybody to look at the if you're interested in the FBI special agent position, to look at the diversity agent recruitment or DAR events that we hold throughout the country that really look at embracing diversity and finding diversity promoting diversity within the FBI. The same is true of our support roles. So whether you want to be a computer scientist, intelligence analyst, a forensic accountant, a pilot, auto mechanic, we have so many support roles within the FBI in which we have folks that help agents and analysts get the job done. But that too, we are very focused on hiring diverse backgrounds. We like to see folks come from all walks of life because perspective drives innovation really in our agency. And I think all of our agencies, we would all say that. So diversity is important. We're actively involved in recruiting from a variety of different locations and backgrounds.
Jonah, would you like to go next? And then we'll finish off with Anne.
Yeah, sure. I'll just echo both Brett and Neal. It's an essential, and I don't just say that lightly, that the Secret Service has a diverse workforce, right? We are in protecting individuals from incredibly diverse backgrounds and leadership positions in the United States. You really need a workforce that reflects, the diversity of the United States, and both investigatively and protectively, it's essential. I'm not totally familiar with all of our recruiting efforts, given I really do focus on the investigative strategic issues, but I know for a fact that is a priority for the agency, and it will only continue to increase in importance, I think, as time goes on, and the nature of sort of the diversity of the country continues to move forward.
And then Anne for our last.
I want to echo what the others have said. We're focused on diversity, but one of the things that's really impressed me about CISA is that within CISA, we've had a lot of focus on a broad range of diversity in listening sessions. Since we're all kind of remote, pulling everyone together to actually talk about the issues and have a frank discussion about why certain people may not include others, how we can give a voice to people who are underrepresented in our day-to-day business. Some of those sessions have frankly come away with tears, as people have been able to freely say, look, I feel I'm not being listened to because of my skin color or whatever, and then people can understand why that happens and how they can change their work life to include people no matter what. So it's not just on the paper. Hiring diversity is extremely important for all the reasons that the other distinguished gentlemen have said, but within it is really a big listening experience. And I'm really happy to be a part of CISA, where we have listening sessions where people can feel free to talk about this.
That's great. It's great to hear that there are so many initiatives across the federal workforce to try to improve diversity and inclusion in the workplace. And so I guess for all of the people in the audience who are considering joining these federal agencies, are there any important hiring initiatives they should know about? Do you have any recommendations for how best to prepare, or any other tips that you can share that can sort of help break into the government, because I think we all know that it's sometimes a little difficult and tricky to work through the application process and knowing all the different routes you can take to enter. And we'll start with Jonah.
Sure. Well, I think, I'll be the first, and I assume all of my co-panelists here will echo what I'm saying. You should come and apply to become a Secret Service agent, right? That's just one of the career paths, but it's, sort of the principal one within the agency, just like it's the principal one, becoming a special agent in the FBI. There are a wide variety of analysts and other positions available. But, for those who are looking for a really exciting, fulfilling long-term career, I would certainly encourage you to apply to become a Secret Service agent. I myself am a civilian, not an agent, but I work every day with agents here in headquarters, and they all love their jobs and have had a fascinating and exciting career. So would encourage everyone to apply. For those who are particularly interested in cyber, we have instituted a couple new programs which are interesting. We now have both a cyber retention initiative, which is additional incentives to keep those with particular cyber skills in the agency to make, we're not going to be as competitive in compensation as the private sector, but, trying to even the playing field a little bit by adding extra supplemental incentives to those who do have those skills. And then we also recently instituted a cyber career track. And the purpose of that is to allow special agents who maybe are less interested in the protective mission and would like to really just devote their career to the investigative side to be able to do that. And, I would encourage folks who are thinking about applying to the Secret Service to become a special agent to do both protection and investigations, because I think they do actually complement each other in important ways. But, if you're really not interested in, flying around with the president and doing those things, and you really just want to catch the bad guys, there's a mechanism now to do exclusively that. So, I would just go to secretservice.gov. Look at, applying for either a uniform division or a special agent role, and then also USA Jobs for specific technical positions as well.
I'll go last. NSA has such a broad range of jobs. I encourage you to go to intelligencecareers.gov, and there's a job explorer that you can work through. Two areas that I'll say are very important to kind of look good as you try to hire in. First is teamwork. Get experience working in teams, especially multidisciplinary teams. Work on projects, whether it's a school or extracurricular activities, and show where you've been involved in teamwork. And second, get acquainted a bit with the cyber landscape, whether you're technical or in some non-STEM career area. Know who the players are, know the roles of the different federal agencies, right? FBI's role is a little different than NSA's. And what are the big challenges within government and industry, and sort of who's working on them will make you better prepared for like an interview, anything like that. Over.
Anne, do you want to perhaps share some tips and your insight?
Yeah, I was reading a little bit of the chat, the question and answers there. I know it's very frustrating for people who have tried to apply to federal government positions and not heard back or not made it past the gates or anything. And I would really encourage you to just be patient with us. Do apply, look for those positions, look for the job postings, look for the virtual job fairs, apply. A lot of the agencies such as CISA have direct hire authority, so we can cut through a lot of that red tape and get you. As far as preparing, someone asked in the Q&A, does it having IT support experience in a call center help? Of course it does. If you have IT background and you just want to get out of the call center or get out of the help desk or whatever and take on a cybersecurity career, that's going to help you a whole lot, because what you're going to be dealing with is IT. So your expertise in that area is going to transfer right over, and you're going to be an asset to the team. What you could do for cyber is, could put together a home lab. There's a lot of cheap ways to do virtualization nowadays. There's a lot of vulnerable images out there that you could practice on. Take an initiative to learn, look at resumes of companies to see what skills they're offering, look at the job and see what it wants, and learn that skill. Take the initiative so you can go into an interview. Once you get there, go into an interview, say, yes, I know that, I have some experience. I'm not an expert in it, but I've been learning it, and that goes a long way. But going to the virtual job fairs, a lot of us have been there in person, in virtual. We'll take you aside and talk to you. Direct hire authority means we can set you up with something right there. You're not going to be like throwing your resume off into the void and then never hearing back. So there's a lot of opportunities there. Just keep trying. It's a really worthwhile way to spend your time. And I promise you, if you get in, you won't regret it.
We call it in the FBI investigative curiosity. I think that's kind of what Ann was talking about. And that's looking for folks who are not willing to just kind of sit there and wait for things to come to them. Because of the nature of our work, we hire people who identify something of interest to them or some way to contribute to their community. And then they really learn that new discipline. They develop this investigative curiosity where they start to learn about password cracking in a good way, right? Downloading hashes into a virtual machine, all for free, and just learning what that looks like. If you're not interested in the technical side, there are ways to do that as well. On the other side, we look for folks who also look to contribute to their communities. I mean, it is a very competitive process, I think, to get into any of our agencies. We have people who really desire to contribute to their country, not just their community, but their country. And so I think we look at things like, what have you done to volunteer? What have you done to do things outside of your place of employment? How have you educated yourself in ways that others might not have? Those things kind of tend to raise above the fray. I saw a question in there about military experience. We really embrace military experience. If you are a veteran, if you're active duty and you're looking at that next step in your career, that's experience that we value. And I think the federal government writ large does that, but I know that the intelligence community and law enforcement agencies do. So we encourage that as well. Yep. Coming from a military organization, right? A DOD component, right, Neal? So it is important, I think, in all our agencies to have that diverse experience. And we look at the person, because if you come into our agencies, you're going to have to get a clearance. And we want to know that this is somebody who we can trust with the nation's most significant secrets related to sources and methods and data confidentiality. So all those are important. I'll make a quick note. I am answering some of the questions in the Q&A. I'm typing some answers. So for my fellow panelists, I think they disappear. So I think if you go to the answered tab, you can also weigh in as well. I just don't want all these to disappear and you haven't had a chance to weigh in.
We're also collecting them as we go, so don't worry. Okay. We're capturing them and we'll ask them in a few minutes.
Some of them we can answer. I think they're brief. I'm answering briefly, but we can definitely elaborate on some of these. So,
and all the discussion today kind of brings up a great point of somebody had also asked somewhere about kind of how do you differentiate between all these agencies? Like, how do you make this choice of, I would like to join the FBI over the NSA or Secret Service or CISA? And so maybe you all could give us a little insight as to why you chose where you were working, and perhaps give some sort of distinguishable characteristics about your agency that are unique to, FBI, NSA and such. And Brett, we'll start off with you.
So why did I apply? I came into the Bureau young compared to most agents. So as an agent, you have to enter no earlier than 23 years old, no later than 37 years old. So those are the age limits for agents. I think it's the same in Secret Service as well. I joined because September 11th. September 11th had a deep impact on me because my wife and I lost a high school friend in the World Trade Center's collapse. And for me, I had always wanted to be an FBI agent, but I always had an interest in computers. My background is in computers. My undergrad work is in computers. I'm doing graduate work now in computers. And my employment prior to this was computers. And so I was really trying to find a way to find a way into the FBI, and cyber at the time seemed like it was really, you know, everybody, terrorists and others were organized crime, like they were all starting to use cyber technologies to engage in illicit behavior. So that had a catalyst. I got in the FBI at 25, and I was young at the FBI Academy. And it was the desire for me, the impetus for me in joining was to put bad guys in jail and make a difference. And so if you're somebody who wants kind of that law enforcement flavor, I think the Secret Service and FBI might be a good way to go, because you get the cyber experience, but you're not defending networks. Prior to the Bureau, I defended networks. I was a IT director, and my job was to protect data and systems. That was fun. I liked it. I liked finding new and innovative ways to do things to defend networks. We're doing the same thing here. We're defending networks, but we also get to work with our partners at NSA to punch back where we can. And I know we can't, I know Neal might cringe. I know we can't get into that in too much detail, but it's, you know, publicly Director Wray and others have said where the FBI's operations can enable Department of Defense operations, we're going to do that to raise the risk and consequence of adversaries in targeting U.S. government and private sector agencies. We can no longer sit around and wait and alert and just let people know they've been hacked. We've got to raise that risk and consequence. And where we can, 2 weeks ago, I was in Prague with 3 team members. It was last minute travel to Prague because 2 cyber criminals were picked up by the Czech police. And we got to go over there and bring them back. That was their first time in the United States. They came here in handcuffs to face U.S. justice. And so that's something that you get to do if you're looking at FBI or Secret Service agencies. I think, you know, the other agencies can speak for themselves, but if you want to have that mission where you really get to do some new and really exciting things, both at CISA and NSA, you know, but you don't want to put bad guys in jail necessarily, there's good opportunities there as well.
Neal, I know you have to unfortunately leave us soon, so why don't you go ahead and address the question? I think you're still on mute.
Sorry, I got stuck in the Q&A window. Yeah, so you know, why would you come to NSA? I came there because some college friends of mine had gone there and said, hey, there's great technical depth and mission depth here. But my view is that if you want to go deep in your area, whether it's as an analyst or a computer scientist or a mathematician, NSA is a great place to do that. And also, if you want to work with a lot of other agencies across sort of the national defense intelligence spectrum, NSA is a good place. We also have really good mobility between the cybersecurity part of NSA and the foreign intelligence, signals intelligence part of NSA. So if you want to do both of those things, NSA and some other agencies, but NSA probably the biggest agency where you can do both and kind of go back and forth multiple times in a career. Over.
Jonah, would you like to share about Secret Service and your choices to join?
Sure. So, you know, I think my path to the Secret Service is different than most of my colleagues' path. So I had been working for a number of years in the U.S. Commerce Department on internet governance and cyber policy from a commercial perspective. And I always kind of found myself increasingly drawn to the law enforcement issues at stake in cyber. And just sort of had an opportunity through relationships that I had. You know, I knew that the Secret Service was building out its policy and strategy team, and you know, so the timing was right, and I came aboard and have loved every minute. But that said, that's sort of not the typical path that most people take. Most come in through recruiting for special agent positions, and you know, why would you go to the FBI versus the Secret Service versus NSA? You know, I think people are drawn to all these agencies and government service for sort of the same reasons, which is, you know, they like to have a mission. They like to have it not just be about money, but about furthering public good, about having sort of a more exciting, maybe more interesting career than if you had worked in the private sector. You know, a lot of people are willing to sacrifice higher incomes for perhaps more rewarding work. So, you know, I think a lot of people at least come to the Secret Service from military backgrounds and sort of other kinds of public service backgrounds where they say, you know, former police officers, where they say, you know what, maybe I could make more money in the private sector, but it seems pretty cool to be able to, you know, help organize a UN General Assembly, or to, you know, travel with the president to Iraq, or, you know, any of these other things that come along with the profession. And so, you know, I think any of the agencies described here, you get to do really interesting work. It's just sort of where there are opportunities, where you get your foot in the door, and you know, where you're most drawn to. But you know, I think sort of any cyber mission within these various departments and agencies is one that you know, you can find a lot of value and new interesting challenges every day.
And last but not least, Anne, who has a really interesting background of coming from foreign service for so long to CISA.
Yeah, I've been in government 18 years, and so CISA's kind of a recent jump. But I had fun in State Department with Foreign Service, but I actually did give up a second tour in Tokyo to stay in cybersecurity, and then went over to CISA. I like being able to do cybersecurity all the time. That's the job. And the job is cybersecurity for the US government. You're doing service and you're doing something fun at the same time. The cool thing about CISA is we're new, and so there's a lot of churn and a lot of development going on. And the fact that my management is technical straight up to the top. We do have senior executive service that are technical, which really says something about the value that CISA places on technical ability, that you are not capped and then you're going to end up going into management and doing, you know, paperwork all the time. You can be technical, hands on keyboard, straight up to the top. So there's much more freedom to do things and to learn to move around to help shape what CISA is, because we're fairly new, to really have a measurable difference in the direction of an agency. That's what really drew me to CISA, and I see it every day.
Thank you for giving that insight. I think it's always nice to know how different people sort of choose the path that they do into the federal workforce. And I guess sort of the last question for today, before we go into sort of the Q&A from the audience, a little bit of a fun question is, you know, we see all of these incidences in the news, like SolarWinds, Microsoft exploit, you know, the water facility getting hacked. And so it'd be interesting to hear how maybe each of your agencies kind of addresses when these big events happen. And obviously within a way that is allowed to be public knowledge. And we'll start with Neal, because I know you have to leave soon.
Thanks, Divya. Yeah, I do have to leave in about 9 minutes. So unfortunately, I had another speaking engagement that I couldn't get out of. So I apologize to everybody. So when these sort of big events hit, you know, like CISA, we're pretty used to them. They happen fairly often. We swing into action. We have clear lanes in the road of what our different organizations within the Cybersecurity Directorate do. For big things like, say, SolarWinds, we'll usually assign an event lead who will be our coordinator internally and also an external face to working with other agencies such as FBI, CISA, and external partners like Microsoft, folks like that. The really important part of that is finding sort of the right people within the organization with the right skills to contribute to that particular event. Right? They're all a little different. They have different technologies involved, different partners involved. Some have an international angle, some don't. And so finding that team is a critical aspect, and then establishing really quickly those connections to the teams at our partner agencies is another big part. Over.
Anne, could you elaborate a little bit also too for what goes on at CISA during these big events?
Yeah, I am an engagement lead for the teams that are sent out to the victim agencies and groups and companies. So it's pretty familiar. We do assemble a team of forensics, host and network forensics, cloud forensics, go out there, find out what they're doing, and help them out. It really is, incidents are kind of traumatic depending how big they are, and pretty used to the victim kind of being spun up and they may not know what to do. So you're kind of doing a kind of a technical here. We're here to help you with the technical part, but we're also here to offer some guidance about what you could be doing, reach backs to partner agencies, get everyone talking, get them the information that they need to the best ability that we can give them, and really kind of help them through that. There is a little bit of an aspect of, at some point, they have to actually do, the work in there. We can't really do that for them. CISA doesn't really reconfigure their routers or anything like that for them, but we can give them the best advice we can using the resources that we have. And SolarWinds was interesting, but it was no different than anything except maybe the scale. So.
And then Jonah and Brett, could you give us also the law enforcement side of that?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you listed a very kind of diverse subset of incidents. I really think how we respond depends upon the target and the origin and the nature of it. It really sort of depends on is the U.S. government the victim? Is private sector the victim? Is it a state and local? I think the thing to note is, almost in all of these cases, there is a crime that was committed, right? So just, no matter if there's a national security response, DOD gets involved, the State Department, there was an underlying crime that took place, and law enforcement is generally the first one on the scene, and begins an investigation. So how that's coordinated between the various departments and agencies within law enforcement, it's, case by case. But the Secret Service is really focused on, like I said, those financially motivated cyber crimes, ransomware, things of that nature. If it's a targeting of federal networks, of us, it's sort of a different response, because we both are remediating our own networks and investigating a crime committed against us, right? So it really sort of, like I said, it depends on kind of the situation. But on these big incidents, I think the key thing to remember is that the U.S. government is really all working together on these things. Each government agency has its own roles and responsibilities, and when things are working well, all those agencies know what they're supposed to be doing, and everyone's moving in the same direction. I think the part of the process of good policy development is making sure that those pieces all fit together seamlessly.
Yeah, so I mentioned PPD 41 up at the beginning, and part of PPD 41 is unity of effort within the federal government. Unity of effort is so important because our agencies have distinct mission sets, but we have to work together when responding to these sorts of events. While our primary mission is investigation and attribution, investigation and attribution ultimately lends to our ability to help folks remediate and hunt the adversary, because we find indicators from our international partners or our friends over at NSA that we can then pass to a victim to help them with remediation. But at the same time, remediation efforts, which CISA and DHS is involved with, collecting evidence during that before you eradicate critical evidence to help us with the investigation and attribution is so important. And so it's important for DHS and CISA to help us collect the evidence that we can use either in a court of law or through diplomatic efforts. So that unity of effort has to be there. And I think that's why we check our egos at the door, right? In as much as possible. And we say, this is the USG, we're here to help. I know that doesn't always go over well with folks, but really when it comes to cyber, we are. Yeah. And we work together as that kind of one effort to help folks, to help protect our economies and our national security. You mentioned SolarWinds. we stood up what's called a unified coordination group within the US government. NSA, CISA and DHS, FBI, Department of Justice, the White House, the National Security Council, we're all part of this unified coordination group. When there's a big event, we come together and we ensure that nobody is blindsided by what another agency might hold, because we're operating for the American people. We're operating in a way that defends government networks and private networks. It defends our economy and our national security. And so we've got to continue to coordinate our effort. And so we do that now, I think, pretty well.
Yeah, if I could add that briefly, that was well stated, Brett. The way we often view it at NSA is we want to be the best we can at playing our position. Right? We bring certain strengths or certain knowledge, as well as our intelligence capacity to each of these unified efforts. And we're going to come in and do our part well, and let FBI do their part well, and let CISA do their part well, et cetera. And all of us also have to collaborate with private industry. Very few of these big events anymore are purely within government. Many of them involve working with private sector, as well as often international partners too. Over.
Well, thank you all for being here. This was a great discussion. And I wanted to get started on some of the Q&A. We have a lot of Q&A going on. Everyone's very interested. And I guess one of the sort of comments that keep coming up is, how is it that people can really try to stand out on their applications, especially if they're not technical, and sort of navigate the different application processes? You have USA.gov, or sorry, usajobs.gov, and there's also separate application mechanisms for FBI, and I think CISA also. And so what are some things that applicants can do to try to stand out as a promising candidate for a job? And anybody can take this.
It used to be the job fairs, right? I've taken part in some of those job fairs, and people would show up and we could just get through them, grab them, put them in a separate room, talk to them, and get them in the door right then and there. I mean, that's what the hiring authority gives us. Nowadays with the COVID, it's a little bit more difficult, but I think we're still trying to do virtual job fairs. But really, if you hear of a job fair, and if you're not in the Washington, D.C. area, this might actually be easier for you since they're virtual now. Show up. I mean, participate in there, get a name in there, find someone who's in the area that you want to work in, and talk to them. Be assertive that way. But that I've seen several people get hired straight out of that. It does take a little while, obviously, through the hiring process. That's where the patience comes in. But the hiring events, any kind of job fair, virtual or not, is really good.
Yeah, from our standpoint, if you're in a position to seek an FBI internship, we have honors internships, and we have them at FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., but also throughout our 56 field offices. So here in Dallas or Detroit, Michigan, or wherever you may be, if we hire you as an intern, you're already obtaining a certain level clearance. You're able to come in here and kind of learn about the FBI's effort. We've already invested in you. So there's a likelihood that you're going to be hired on full time if you do well. So if you're in a position to look for an internship, that helps. If you're beyond that and you're not looking or able to do an internship with the FBI, we have certain programs like InfraGard. That's our public-private sector partnership. Where we share threat intel and we build relationships with private sector organizations in all hazards, not just cyber, but it can be active shooter, workplace violence, in terrorism, anywhere. And each field office has an InfraGard chapter. I think it's infragard.org or .gov. So check that out. Finding ways to connect, I think, is important with the agencies, finding ways to connect to public service. To a degree, it's like other jobs. You want to make yourself stand out through how you, like I mentioned it before, how you invest in your community. And so you don't have to do all these big things to impact society. If you're working in your community to volunteer and impact the lives of folks in your community, you're doing something, you're making a difference, right? So those kind of small tangible ways help you stand out. And then learning opportunities. If you're looking specifically for cyber, you're looking for a computer scientist role, you're looking for even an agent job, look at cyber certification, showing that you went that extra length to learn a new discipline and get certified in that discipline means a lot as well.
I'm now speaking just as myself, but I think my co-panelists probably agree that the U.S. government hiring system is pretty broken. And some of these things are things that are just inevitable and that you can't really fix, right? As we all noted, to get one of these jobs, you're going to need generally a TS/SCI security clearance, right? And that can take a very, very long time depending upon your background, right? If you've lived in multiple countries, you've got, some sort of other thing in your past that is totally, fine, but it just adds complication. From the time you apply to the time you actually brought on board can be upwards of 2 years. And it's worth it, but I can understand why a lot of people get very frustrated. The same with USA Jobs. It's really sort of a crapshoot sometimes about, you might be incredibly well qualified for the position, but there's something going on in the back end that you just don't know about where, there is somebody who's already kind of been identified for a role. It's just, or maybe the budget actually wasn't ultimately available. Things happen. So I think it can be very, very frustrating. I've been through it myself. I think sort of the keys are getting your foot in the door, right? So as Brett noted, doing an internship, right? So you get to know people, you learn about opportunities, you learn about openings, doing the Presidential Managerial Fellows Program, I think is a great program. It's an easy way to get in the building, right? Which is often half the battle. You might have the perfect resume for a position, but if you don't have the actual mechanism to get hired, it's a moot point. So I would stress reaching out to people at these agencies if you're interested, ask them about opportunities, explore volunteer or internship opportunities, and just sort of pound the pavement, because it's not really there's not an easy way to get in these positions. The special agent positions are a little bit different because it's a little bit more formalized than some of the analysts and other roles, but even the special agent positions, it's going to take a long time from beginning to end, so start planning on doing that.
One of the advice that I was given midway through my career when I was looking at another agency from state was, if you can get your foot in the door in any way possible, do so. Don't wait around for the perfect job to come in. If you can come in as a management specialist, you get your foot in the door, and then lateral movement, you can see the opportunities a little bit better, lateral movement's a little bit easier. But start expanding your view and taking jobs that don't seem like they're right what you want to do, but they're close. Go for those. Just kind of paper USA Jobs with your resume, and you'll eventually get in. It is worth it.
As somebody who has tried to navigate USA Jobs, I've been extremely frustrated, but I have heard the same, advice of trying to just get your foot in the door and making lateral moves and working your way up to where you want to be. And a number of people in the chat actually asked, how do you tell the difference between some of these jobs? Because some of them are mainly recruitment efforts. Some of them are actual, intended jobs to be filled immediately. And maybe also give a little insight into the types of positions. Like, you mentioned there's the secret special agent, the analysts. And so what are some of the processes that go on for some of these different positions? And maybe Anne, you can start us off.
Sure. I mean, I don't have any special magic about USA Jobs. Sometimes it's baffling to me because the job description doesn't really, I can read a job description for CISA and not on USA Jobs and not quite understand where it's going. But yeah, it's, I don't think I have any magic sauce for that. Looking at the actual agency's website, instead of just USA Jobs is useful because sometimes there's a org chart or here's the structure of our agency. You can get an idea of what it is and kind of match things to the USA Jobs. Yeah.
Can you guys
Brett,
hear me?
Oh, yes.
Oh, hey, so this is Samantha. I know Neal had to hop off earlier, so I'm actually one of the recruiters with the NSA. So glad some of these questions switched over to hiring, which I can absolutely speak to. So so with NSA, although some of our positions might show up on U.S. jobs, we really do go off of our, personal website, which is intelligencecareers.gov/NSA. So all of our applications on there are absolutely looked at, each and every single one of them. That was a new initiative about 3 to 4 years ago. So you can assure that when your application goes in, someone will see it. I'm not saying it's going to be in a week, but it will be seen. My biggest advice there is just to cast your net wide. Take a look at those minimum qualifications. Make sure that you qualify for it. Once you do, just feel free to apply to as many that look interesting to you. There's no, downside to applying to more than one position. And for students as well, we have some development program opportunities in addition to just regular direct hire positions. So there's definitely some variety in there, and you could kind of choose to go both routes. So just pay attention to, when the ads are closing, that's a big thing. And I'm pretty sure that's on USA Jobs as well. They do close on a certain date, and we can't necessarily accept any applications after those dates. I'm not sure if there are any freshmen, sophomores on the line, but, if you're looking at things like internships and co-op opportunities, those, at least for us, come, around August timeframe. If you're a junior and you're about a year out from graduating, you're probably already looking at full-time because of processing. But I know those ads can be a little confusing, classification. It can only go so far. We could only say so much, on the unclassified network. But if it sounds interesting to you, like I said, just make sure that you qualify for it, put your application in, feel free to go for more than one, and include all relevant experience that you have on your resume. We were talking, I think, a little bit earlier about having those, competitions if you're really into doing like capture the flags and stuff like that. But maybe you weren't able to get, some internship experience on your resume. That still shows us that you're really interested in the field and can really make you stand out. So at least for us, you don't have to limit your resume to a page if you have a lot of, stuff that you do on your own time. If you're one of those people who likes to, code in their basement, we love hiring those people. So just try to put that all on there to make your resume stand out. Thanks.
Thank you. And then maybe Jonah and Brett, you can also talk about some of the different pathways too. You have the special agent versus analyst versus policy position. And even the expectations, for so many people on the line, they're in different stages of their careers or even schooling. And so should they be planning 6 months out, a year out to apply for some of these positions?
Yeah, from the FBI standpoint, there is a difference, a significant difference in the agent versus professional support or intelligence analyst role. As an agent, if you apply to the agent position, it really is meant to be a second career for you. You're already in your career. You've got several years of experience at least in something. You apply to the agent position. Here's what you know. If you get through the process and you're going to end up at Quantico, Virginia at the FBI Academy, and you're going to study and you're going to learn how to become an FBI agent. You're not just going to focus on cyber at the FBI Academy. FBI agents learn to do everything: counterterrorism, counterintelligence, criminal violations, violent crime, gangs. You could technically be assigned to any field office and work any violation. Now, if you have cyber skills, there's a very high likelihood your first assignment will be to a cyber squad because we need that technical talent. But you can plan on going to Quantico, and as an agent, you're going to carry a gun, you're going to have arrest authorities. Even if you're working cyber crime, when events like January 6th happen, you're gonna get pulled into command post situations where you're gonna work domestic terrorism. Like, we have to surge our agent assets wherever we can. Now, on the support side, by the way, all our positions are listed at fbijobs.gov. On the support side, you're really applying to the field office you want to work in. So if you're in Detroit, if you're in Dallas, if you're in San Francisco, you're going to fbijobs.gov and you're looking for that field office if that's where you want to work. Or if you're open to several field offices into moving, you're going to look at positions in those field offices that you want to apply to. And just like the other agencies, we have very diverse positions. We have one of the largest fleets of aircraft, most, of any civilian agency outside Customs and Border Patrol. We have pilots, we have mechanics, we have a large fleet of emergency response vehicles. We have mechanics who work on those. We have encryption in reverse malware engineers. We have lab technicians who do crime scene based investigations. So even if you're not looking at necessarily at cyber, we have probably one very diverse sets of job abilities of many agencies out there. And the good thing is you get an opportunity to try a lot of different things. Even if you're a Intel analyst or you're hired in as a operational support technician, somebody who's helping the squad admin functions, you could still be part of the evidence response team as a collateral duty. You can be a part of our tactical operations center and serve in a command post as part of a collateral duty. So there's a lot of collateral things you get to do as well, but you got to get your foot in the door. And that's where I would echo what other folks have said. Even if you want to ultimately get to the agent position and you're having a tough time doing that, I do also encourage you to apply to different positions within the FBI and then look at transitioning to agent from there as well.
Yeah, I would just echo what Brett said. I think a lot of those things that are true of the FBI are true of Secret Service. I think the first question you want to ask yourself is, do you want to be a gun carrier? Do you want to have a badge? A lot of folks, the answer is no. I really just want to be working on back end data analytics and help track down the bad guys and let the gun carriers go out and arrest the guy. That's just not of interest to them. Some people come on as analysts and then, as Brett noted, say, you know what, this special agent career track looks interesting. I'd like to apply for that. So, it's always an option if you come on as a civilian and to transition to an officer. The thing I would just advise, at least broadly, especially if you're not going to go one of those sort of traditional special agent tracks, is to do your best to kind of ask around. A lot of you, I understand, are given AU or here in Washington, and as COVID and things open up, start scheduling coffees with people in government, formerly in government, people who know organizations, and just sort of ask around what's open, right? Because if you're sort of shooting in the dark from USA Jobs, you don't have the backstory about what's up with that particular position. So you really sort of sometimes need that inside info to know what's going on to accurate, to put in an application that's going to be competitive, because you don't know if the job that was posted, maybe it's something that they're just sort of putting it out there because they hope in the future to fill it, or you don't quite know what's going on. So figuring out who are the people who have the information about the particular job is a huge advantage. And I think it's maybe not the fairest in certain respects, but it is certainly the way that things get done, where if you are the one who's done the extra work to find out what exactly they're looking for, I think you improve your chances quite a bit.
Yeah, you bring up these great points about the different jobs you have available and the time it takes to get into them. And for all these jobs, also you mentioned the big bad security clearance that you have to get. And Jonah, I know you were gracious enough to discuss some of this when you came and guest lectured about what it takes to get this security clearance. And so we've had a number of questions come up of, can non-citizens apply for these positions? What kind of things affect a security clearance background check? And so maybe you could also discuss that as well, since there are obviously people who are interested in joining the federal workforce, but perhaps are not citizens at the current moment.
Sure. So I would say that the vast majority of Secret Service positions are for U.S. citizens. You cannot become a special agent if you are not a U.S. citizen. That said, we do have non-citizen contractors and other employees that do work here. But I would say, working in the U.S. government as a non-U.S. citizen is a challenge, as it is in any government working as a non-citizen. You got to be a citizen of the country to be, a member of the government of that country. So in terms of the security clearance, what was the question with that, Divya?
I guess how extensive is it, and is there anything people should really be on, worried about in terms of their background and what would perhaps, negate against them being hired for a position?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. It is long. It is pretty invasive. You have to be okay with criminal investigators coming in and asking you very personal questions, asking your family and friends very personal questions, your neighbors, right? They really dig in deep into your past. I think the number one rule of thumb that I always try to convey is just be transparent, right? If you had some slip up in your past, as when you were younger, that may not matter as long as you, from the outset, are very, very transparent with it, right? So you don't want to try to, sugarcoat things. You don't want to have somebody, your investigator, find out later that you weren't completely forthright. So that's my major sort of piece of advice. I wouldn't let things that you think might prevent you from getting a security clearance keep you from trying. Just, when you apply, first thing you want to tell your investigator or put into your SF-86 form, which is sort of the standard background information form, if there was some arrest or something that had happened in the past that, whatever is in your past you're a little concerned about, you just want to be upfront and, go talk to a recruiter and ask, listen, is this going to be difficult for me to get a security clearance because of this incident? And they'll let you know.
Yeah, I will echo that. I mean, I think people get really wound up about what they might have done that would stop them from doing it, and they get really worried about it. But it really is about don't do anything that you wouldn't want on the front page of the Washington Post the next day. I mean, if you're happy with the way you've done your life and you are honest with, the investigators and honest on the forms and stuff, you shouldn't have a problem. Don't get wrapped around that time when you stole candy as a 6-year-old at the store, whether or not that's going to keep you from government work forever. Just be honest. What Jonah said, be forthright. Don't worry about it. Give it a try. It's probably not something that you need to worry about.
I'll echo that as well. This is Sam from NSA again. Absolutely be forthright. Like they said, everything is very case by case in most cases. So, just be upright about everything, be truthful on your forms, be truthful with your polygrapher, everything like that. Everything is a case by case basis. So, what you are very worried about, they may have heard before. So don't be too worried about it. Going back to the citizen question, all of our positions require U.S. citizenship. And then another thing that just is kind of the automatic disqualifier is drug use within the last 12 months. So that's just from the date that you apply. If you have drug use in your history, it's not a disqualifier, just like I said, in the last 12 months. So that's really the only automatic disqualifier that we have off the bat.
I want to add something about, since we're talking about cybersecurity and hiring, if you are going to take the initiative to learn cybersecurity, please do it in a legal manner. Going out and hacking websites without permission on the internet is not a way to learn, and that's going to get you in trouble. There's plenty of legal ways to do that, so please keep legal when you're doing your learning.
Yeah, and a lot of folks, like if they do that, they don't disclose information on their SF-86, their application form. But keep in mind, when you apply to our agencies, it's not just whether you've disclosed it or not. You're going to go through a polygraph examination, and they're going to test you on what we call the box to see if you're being honest about your polygraph. And so many applicants, unfortunately, end up failing because they didn't disclose things on the application that probably would have been explained away. But that lack of candor is significant. It shows a vulnerability in your life that will be a disqualifier for you. I mean, look at some of the most damaging spies in U.S. history. They came from our agencies. Robert Hansen came from the FBI. Aldrich Ames. I mean, you can go down the list. In foreign nation states, foreign adversaries, KGB, FSB, other organizations looked at vulnerabilities in their life, whether it was money, whether it was, notoriety and being able to do something that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do, circumvent computer systems and get away with it. It was some vulnerability in their life that the FBI or the CIA or the NSA didn't know about, that they started to capitalize on. And I would say the same is true now for you as an applicant. Look at anything in your life that is undisclosed and say, listen, do I need to take care of this now before I apply to this agency so that I can disclose it? Because if there is this hidden vulnerability in my life, it's probably going to be found out in the application process, and it's going to disqualify me from a clearance. It's better to be honest about it up front than have the agency find out later that you didn't disclose it.
I guess that brings sort of, we'll go with two last questions. And so this question came up of, with all these kind of restrictions as well, why go federal government versus private sector? Is there a competition between private sector and government in terms of recruiting? And are there any ways that federal government perhaps has benefits that the private sector doesn't, that people can consider when applying for jobs? Open to anybody to answer.
Well, we have, I'll say a couple things here. So number one, at least in our agencies, we're compensated fairly at the federal level. So, our compensation is publicly known. For agent positions, in addition to your base pay, you get what's called law enforcement availability pay. That's because you respond to Prague or Czech Republic when you need to go, you got to go, right? So you're on call all the time as an FBI agent. You get 25% of your base salary is law enforcement availability pay. So we do okay. We have a great retirement system when it comes to pensions. You can retire as an agent after 20 years of service or at 50 years of age, depending on which comes first or last or when you enter. But ultimately, you can retire, collect a pension as a result of your service, and go work in private sector at that point. In addition to the pension, there's a great match on your thrift savings plan. So that's our kind of our 401k for the U.S. government. Outside of compensation and good healthcare as well, I'll throw that in there. Outside of that, there's job security. When the economy goes south, the federal government is notorious for really needing those folks who are working national security and criminal matters to stay employed. So you're going to have job security. And I would also say there is significant opportunities for training and personal advancement that private sector. I worked in private sector, and it's tough sometimes to get certifications paid for. I mean, the FBI has paid for 5 certifications for me at probably $5,000 or $6,000 a pop. And the reason for that is we have to engage with credibility our private sector partners. We have to go in when they've been breached, and we have to understand how to do threat hunting, how to do incident response, how to get threat intelligence and share that. We have to understand that, and private sector training is part of that. The federal government also offers student loan reimbursement programs. So if you are leaving college, you come to work for the federal government as part of a retention incentive, since sometimes in cyber, the salaries don't always equal out in private sector in the U.S. government. We will reimburse some of your, or all of your, depending on what you have, student loans. And if you're looking for a graduate degree, the U.S. government will also pay for graduate degrees. So university education programs, you can go to, American University and seek a graduate degree and have some or all of that compensated by the U.S. government. So there's a lot of good incentives there as well. Not to mention, you get to see, like, I still get thank you notes from families who lost life savings or lost a child as a result of a kidnapping, and they still remember you as an individual who gave them comfort in a very difficult time when you work in law enforcement. So just that job that is kind of a calling as opposed to a career is important to us.
Yeah, I mean, I think Brett more or less took the words out of my mouth. The question is sort of, what do you want to do with your career, and what do you find value in, right? Do you, and your own financial situation, right? So, I do think the U.S. government, federal government pays enough to live a comfortable life. You're not going to be rolling around in, a fancy Mercedes or whatever, but, you make enough to be comfortable. But the point is that, maybe you could make significantly more in the private sector, but you can't do the cool things that you can do in the government. Those are really unique to government service, right? You know, you're not going to fly on a G6 or whatever the FBI has now, you know, out to Europe to arrest some guy in the middle of the night who's committed, you know, the worst cyber crimes in the decade, whatever. You know, it's what do you value in sort of your professional life? Is it the mission and the interesting stories and the adventure, or is it, you know, making more money? And everybody's situation is different, so I'm not going to judge one way or the other, but I think it's worth the hassle to get in if you know some of the, you know, those things that drive you to public service are you know, what you value.
One thing I think that the being in the public service gives you the power and the privilege to do the right thing. If you're working for private sector, sometimes the employer is going to tell you, you know, in the interest of business, you want to tell them to sell this product and stuff. We don't have that kind of limitation. What we tell people is what they need to do, the right thing to do. And I encounter that a lot when you encounter, you know, we're working with private sector. Sometimes your contacts have to change what they tell you because they're answering to shareholders. We're answering to the American people. So we're going to tell them the right thing to do and always keep to that line. And you don't get punished for that. That's what you do. That's the job.
Well, thank you all for those insights. I guess the last question for today is, you know, with the pandemic, it's been difficult for people to go to job fairs or even, you know, connect personally with people. And so you brought up multiple times about reaching out and talking to somebody and getting to them. Are there easy ways for people to sort of look somebody up and be like, hey, can I talk to you about joining the FBI? It's kind of difficult, obviously, to find somebody on FBI.gov to just pick up the phone and talk to. So are there ways that people can try to reach out, at least right now, since we are so remote, to talk to somebody about joining these agencies?
Just one piece of advice. I mean, you know, this is School of Public Affairs. I don't know how many of you are students in the school, but, you know, a lot of your professors have great connections. And I would not be shy about asking them to say, listen, I'm interested in a career at the FBI. You know, you talk to Sasha O'Connell, she'll know some people to talk to, right? So I would leverage the university first. And then, you know, you sort of have to start small and work your way up in terms of, you know, go get an internship somewhere, talk to your boss at your internship, talk to the organization. It's just, you know, it sort of has to snowball a little bit. You know, hitting people up randomly on LinkedIn probably isn't the way to go about it, but, you know, it's worth a shot. You got to show, you know, you got to be determined to do it and not give up because there's just gonna be a lot of people not responding to your emails and things like that, but you just got to keep chugging along until something lands.
I think the LinkedIn angle is probably, I mean, as much as you kind of have to be kind of careful about that, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah,
So for the NSA specific, oh, sorry, I'm always cutting someone off.
No, that's all right. I'm trying to view mics, but I'm not seeing them come on and off. So go ahead.
So for NSA specifically, actually, if you go on our website, we have a virtual recruitment tab that's pretty useful to see the virtual events we have coming up. A lot of those virtual fairs, you're actually able to get that one-on-one time to talk in a chat room with one of our recruiters or someone in the actual mission side. So those are great to be able to really just talk to someone one-on-one, to be able to, you know, ask whatever specific questions that you have, sometimes even review resumes specifically and everything like that. So check that out on our website.
Yeah, we have recruiting events throughout the country. So not just in Washington, D.C. So looking at the field office that covers where you live is an important part of that. Find out where those events, FBI events, are being held, where U.S. government recruiting events are being held in your area of responsibility, and attend those. We also have recruiters in each FBI field office. Anybody who applies, whether it's to the special agent or support positions, they apply through their local field office. So reaching out and talking to a recruiter in the local field office is a positive step for anybody considering a career with the FBI.
Well, I think we are just at the end of our time right now. So I will say on behalf of AU School of Public Affairs, the SPA Tech Policy Association, and the Alpha Phi Sigma Criminal Justice Honor Society, thank you to Anne, Jonah, Brett, Neal, and Samantha for taking the time out of, as we now know, your very busy days to help us out. And of course, thank you to the audience for joining us, and I hope you all have a great rest of the day.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.